All right, kids. So let's get rolling on this second portion of class, which is right. We have Woodrow Wilson, we have progressivism. We'll be getting into World War One, mostly right now, talking about the causes of World War One, kind of America on the home front. And one of the topics I wanted to save for you here is the war itself. And as this slide indicates, this is the war I think that changed it all for the United States. At least for the short term with respect to some political implications and forever as it pertains to what the face of war looks like. Okay. Um, in the short term, World War One is going to result, we will prove today, in America's withdrawal into becoming until World War II, until we were sucker punched into World War II, in fact, drawn into World War II, America is going to withdraw uh, into this period of isolationism as a result of World War One. In large part, that's because of how nasty World War One itself is with respect to the actual fighting, the use of super modernized weaponry and chemical warfare. This is the war really that does change it all. I've got a video linked here for you. I want you to watch for a couple of minutes right here on this slide. The one thing you should know about World War One. Check this video out, then come on back to me. Here we go. So there's a pretty good representation in this next clip as well of how brutal this is. This is a clip where we see some of what we just witnessed kind of dramatized in a film called War Horse, and it's a depiction of just how grotesque, how nasty, how brutal the trench warfare was in World War One. Something we just heard a little bit about. Check out this clip from War Horse and come back to me. We're starting with some videos today. All right. And then finally, third out of three videos in a row, I want you to get into this clip from History Channel talking more about America at war during World War One. Okay. So I think we've got a pretty good body of evidence, right, of how this war changes warfare, right, changes America. The war comes to an end, of course, with Germany's surrender. Um, and let's talk a little bit more about the effects of the war on the United States, the casualties. Uh, you got some numbers here. Total of 8.5 million combat deaths. 67 million men had been mobilized. From the United States, a total dead of 50,000. Another total wounded, upwards of 200,000. You have, several thousand taken prisoner. This is an incredibly expensive war, not just from an economic standpoint, but from a standpoint of emotional drain and manpower. And I think especially so because of what the soldiers had gone through that we had seen in our previous depictions here via those video clips. When we get out of war, Wilson, of course, is still our president, and he wants to envision a post-war world. He wants to prevent another one of these world wars. And so, what does he want to do? He wants to guarantee freedom of the seas. He wants to eliminate economic trade barriers. He wants countries around the world to reduce their military. He wants to move away from this period of imperialization and colonization that kind of got us into some of this hot mess to begin with. Um, so, no more colonization, promoting the idea of self determination with respect to government in island nations and what he would hope would become formerly colonized nations. Um, Creating this idea that there would be no more secret treaties, okay, and that government happenings, if you will, would happen out in the open. He calls for formation of the League of Nations, which we could think of as kind of an early vision for like the United Nations, for instance. But this would be a collective body of governments around the world um, whose goal is to serve out these objectives, economic and peaceful objectives, without coming into another world war. You can see what his 14 points here are. This is Wilson's 14-point plan. This is Wilson's plan for this post-war world, right? And we talked about some of these points already: open diplomacy, freedom of the seas, removal of economic barriers, reduction of the armaments, reducing militaries worldwide, this movement away from colonization and imperialization. There are some other, in particulars that he gets into here with respect to Russia and Belgian sovereignty, restoring French territory, some that are kind of particular to World War One, of course, as you see on this list. But the overarching ideas are what kind of guides Wilson's 14-point plan. You don't necessarily need to know the 14 points, but like from this list right here, you probably should know 1 through 5 and kind of the spirit of Wilson's 14-point plan. And if you see that term 14 points, you know what it refers to. Wilson, of course, is working with other world leaders to try to make this happen. The big four, as it were, would include the nations Great Britain, Italy, France, and the United States. Remember, at this point, for sure, the United States has established itself as a premier world power, not just through military might, but also, and through military might, right? But also through democratic and diplomatic means. The United States is on the stage that they desired to be on. Um, at the Treaty of Versailles, which is that document and action that officially brings an end to World War One and stabilizes the world after the war. Um, a lot of Wilson's 14-point proposals are rejected. Um, a lot of the particulars, right, on about certain land claims and that sort of thing. But Wilson does notably get the League of Nations included in the Treaty of Versailles. But he has to get it approved by the Republican controlled Congress, keeping in mind, right, Wilson is a Democrat. The Republicans in Congress at this day absolutely despise the notion of joining the League of Nations. One Republican senator, Henry Cabot Lodge, whose name we've come across before, is particularly fierce in his opposition to this treaty. And you can see some depictions of this. I love this cartoon on the bottom, right? Where the League of Nations, of course, is depicted as a peaceful dove carrying an olive branch, right? All symbols of peace, right? And the U.S. senator cowering in fear. See that horrible vulture? Take it away! Take it away! This would obviously be constructed by someone who's in favor, right, of the Treaty of Versailles, in favor of the League of Nations in particular, and can't understand necessarily Republican opposition to the same. But that opposition comes in some part because of American traditions, right? Of isolationist like policies. George Washington, you'll remember in his farewell address, had warned about permanent foreign alliances, right? Um, in particular, with the League of Nations, some are opposed to what they call Article 10, okay? That nations would have to help out other nations. So that is to say that um, all of the nations that are within the League of Nations would be bound to support one another, okay, with any particular issues that they might have that would create war on their behalf. So the idea is that Article 10 would dissuade non League of Nations member countries from attacking or affronting League of Nations countries because they know that they are supported by the other nations bound by Article 10, other nations within the League of Nations. Um, Republican senators see this as a promise that we're going to get into more war. Okay. And the United States at this point, as I said, in particular, because of what World War One looked and felt like, and what it cost from an economic, but again, more importantly, an emotional standpoint, a casualty standpoint. The United Nations is now increasingly isolationist. So we've seen a rapid shift, right, from like the 1890s to the 19 teens here. And so Congress ultimately rejects the treaty. The League of Nations never happens. Okay. And that rejection of the League of Nations hallmarks this period of American isolationism. Um, Beginning in the 1920s and really extending all the way through the mid 1940s. We're talking about 25 years of an isolationist America, keeping in mind that even while war is raging in Europe with the outset of World War II starting in 1939, the United States is out. Okay, they're out. We're going to get into cash carry and lend lease and some of the non kind of military ways that the United States is supporting allies, but they are not going to be entangled in war. They are an isolationist nation until, of course, we're not with the bombing of uh, Pearl Harbor. So the United Nations withdrawal into isolationism is absolutely an after effect of World War One that is significant for your understanding. Okay. I got one more video here that I want you to get into, um, talking more about America at war. And then I think we're going to be wrapping up this class. So check it out. Come back here in a minute and I'll wrap up my video. All right. So that is all I got. I hope you guys have a wonderful spring break. Thank you so much and be safe out there, guys.